The gig economy is a slow-motion knife fight. You don't die, you just bleed out one $50 gig at a time. I'm a freelance video editor, which sounds creative until you realize you spend most of your days airbrushing the pores off crypto influencers and trying to make unboxing videos feel dynamic. My apartment is a 400 square foot box that smells like stale coffee and anxiety. This month, rent was a cliff I was dangling from by my fingernails. I needed one more gig. It came from a lifestyle vlogger named Caden Vibes, who insisted I call him by his handle. He wanted a quick turnaround on a brand deal for some mushroom-based energy powder. The problem? His footage was unusable. He'd filmed himself against a bedsheet that was more wrinkled beige than green screen. "I can't key this, Caden," I typed, my temples throbbing. "The lighting is all over the place and the background is contaminated." "Bro, just work your magic," he replied, followed by a rocket emoji. I needed EOD. The brand is waiting. EOD. End of day. That meant I had 6 hours to somehow fake a professional studio shot, or I wouldn't make rent. I couldn't refilm him, but he needed a dynamic product insert. My only option was to film the product myself and composite it. I didn't own a green screen. I frantically searched online. Best Buy was too expensive. Amazon Prime was too slow. Then I found a site I'd never heard of, Glimpse. It looked like a knockoff of a knockoff, filled with algorithm-generated product names. But they had a same-day courier option. I found one. The listing was just portable 5x7 Chroma backdrop. The price was suspicious, $12.99. The seller was TheWeaver. No reviews. I was desperate. I clicked buy. 3 hours later, a man in an unmarked gray hoodie dropped a long, thin cardboard tube at my door. No knock. Just a soft thud. The tube had no label, no branding. I popped the plastic cap and slid the contents out. It was a collapsible green screen, but the feel of it was wrong. It wasn't fabric, not really. It felt like a dense, heavy, almost cold plastic. And the color. It was the greenest green the first have ever seen. It was so pure, so deep, it seemed to vibrate, drinking the light in my dim apartment. It didn't reflect light, it ate it. I shook off the weird feeling. I was losing time. I set up my cheap box lights and my old DSLR. I unrolled the screen, locking its flimsy tripod stand. The air in the room instantly felt flatter, quieter, like the screen was dampening the sound. I placed the garish tub of shroom powder on a small stool. I hit record. I filmed 30 seconds of the product, just sitting there. Static shot. Easy. I packed the screen away. It rolled up with a strange, oily smoothness. I stuffed it back in the tube and threw it in my closet. I sat down at my workstation, the holy trinity of screens glaring back at me. I ingested the footage. Dropped the file into my Adobe Premiere timeline. There it was, the tub of powder, sitting in front of that sickeningly perfect green. I dragged the Ultra Key effect onto the clip. I took the eyedropper tool. I clicked on the green. And my breath caught. It didn't just key. It vanished. There was no artifacting. No spill. No fuzzy edges that needed choking or softening. Where the green screen had been, there was now a perfect, absolute, digital black. A $0.000000 void. It was the cleanest key I had ever pulled in my entire decade-long career. "Damn," I muttered. A smile touched my face for the first time all day. $12. I dropped in a generic tech motion background Caden Vibes had provided, added the text, and exported the file. I emailed the invoice and the video link. Rent was paid. I leaned back, rubbing my eyes. I needed coffee. I went to my tiny kitchen. I'd used my favorite mug for the shoot, a bright, chipped, ceramic red mug, to prop up the shroom tub to get the right angle. I'd left it on the counter right next to my editing bay. It wasn't there. I frowned. I checked the sink. Not there. The dishwasher. No. On my desk? No. I knew I left it there. I am meticulous about my workspace. I'm a video editor. Where did I put that file? Is the same mental muscle as where did I put that mug? I live in 400 square feet. It's not like it could be in the West Wing. I searched the whole apartment. Under the couch. In the bathroom. In the fridge, for some reason. The red mug was gone. A cold, prickly feeling crawled up my neck. I told myself I was just exhausted. I probably threw it out by mistake with the takeout boxes last night. I was tired. I was just tired. I went back to my computer to shut it down. My Premiere project was still open on the screen. I looked at the timeline. And I stopped breathing. The motion background was still playing. The text was still there. But the tub of shroom powder was gone. The graphic was just floating over an empty, digital void. My heart hammered. A glitch, I whispered. It's a rendering glitch. I toggled the effects off on the video clip to see the original, raw footage. I stared. The raw footage showed my desk. It showed the box lights. It showed the background of my apartment outside the green screens area. But where the green screen had been, there was nothing. Just the perfect, digital black void. And the tub of mushroom powder? It was gone. It was gone from the source file. It wasn't a visual effect. The file itself had been hollowed out. I frantically opened the original .mp4 file directly from my hard drive in a separate video player. It was the same. A 30-second video of an empty stool, sitting in front of a gaping, black, perfectly shaped rectangle that had eaten the green screen, the product, and my favorite red mug. My phone buzzed on the desk. It was an email from Caden Vibes. Bro. The product shot is sick. Clean AF. But one note, you sent me 30 seconds of just the background? Where's the product? My blood turned to ice. I looked at the timeline again. I had deleted the footage of the product. I had keyed the product itself out of existence. No. That wasn't right. I hadn't keyed the product. I had keyed the green screen. I ran to the closet. I ripped the door open and grabbed the cardboard tube. I fumbled with the plastic cap, my hands shaking so violently I could barely get it open. I pulled out the screen. It unrolled slightly in my grip, the unnaturally green fabric cool against my skin. Woven into the very bottom edge of the fabric, so small I had missed it completely, was a single thread. It was bright, ceramic red. The exact color of my missing mug. My fingers closed around the red thread. It was taut, unyielding. It wasn't cotton or polyester. It felt slick and hard, like a line of cooled glass. I pulled, hard. It didn't budge. It was part of the fabric. It was the fabric. My phone buzzed again, rattling on the desk like a trapped insect. Caden Vibes. Bro? Where's the file? The brand is blowing me up. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't type. What could I say? Sorry, I think my new green screen ate your product. My eyes darted around my tiny apartment. I ran to the kitchen. I tore open the trash can, digging through coffee grounds and takeout containers. No red mug. I ripped open the dishwasher. Empty. I checked the cupboard where it should be. The mug wasn't just missing. It was gone. The screen hadn't just edited the video file. It had edited my apartment. It had reached through the lens and taken the physical object. I stumbled back to the desk, my mind racing. File corruption, I typed, my fingers feeling thick and numb. The SSD glitched. I'm reshooting the insert now. Give me 30 minutes. A lie. A stupid, impossible lie. The mushroom powder was gone, too. I couldn't reshoot. But I had to know. I had to be sure. I was a rational person. I was an editor. I believed in codecs and corrupted data, not this. I left the screen in the closet. I grabbed my camera, went to my desk, and pointed it at my keyboard. I hit record. I filmed the keyboard for 10 seconds. I stopped recording. I ingested the file. Dropped it in Premiere. I applied the Ultra key. I clicked the eyedropper on the black G key. The G key disappeared from the video, replaced by the background. Standard keying. I looked down at my physical keyboard. The G key was still there. I tapped it. Click. I let out a gasping, hysterical laugh. Of course. It only worked on the green. The screen was the catalyst. It was a glitch. I just lost the mug. I was overworked, exhausted, and panicking. I had to prove it. I went back to the closet. My hand hesitated on the tube. Touching it felt wrong, like reaching into a dark hole. I slid it out. The air in the room went dead again. The silence was heavy, pressurized. I unrolled the screen. That impossible, vibrating green filled my vision. I set it up. I needed something to test. Something I wouldn't miss. I found it on my windowsill, a half-dead succulent in a small terracotta pot. I placed the plant on the stool. I aimed the camera. I hit record. My apartment felt like a tomb. The only sound was the low hum of my hard drive. 10 seconds. Stop. I rolled the screen up, my skin crawling where it brushed my arm. I jammed it back in the tube. I sat at my desk. Ingested the file. Dragged it to the timeline. The footage stared back at me, a dying plant on a stool, in front of a green void. I dragged the Ultra key. I grabbed the eyedropper. My cursor hovered over the green. I could feel my heart in my teeth. I clicked. The pop of the key was instantaneous. The green vanished, replaced by the digital $0000000 black. The plant in the stool remained. I checked the source file. Same thing. The plant was still there. See? I whispered, a shaky grin spreading across my face. It was what? I looked back at the timeline. The plant was there. But the pot, the little terracotta pot, was gone. I hadn't keyed the plant. I had keyed the screen. The plant was just in front of it. The pot was also in front of it. Why was one gone and not the other? Wait. I zoomed in on the footage. The stool the plant was on, one of its legs, just the very bottom edge, had been in front of the green screen. The other two were on my floor, off the screen's area. In the video, the plant sat on a stool that now had only 2 legs. It just floated there, defying physics. I turned slowly, dreadfully, toward the actual stool. It was still standing. The succulent was still in its pot. I walked over. I touched the pot. Solid. I touched the plant. The leaves were dry and prickly. I touched the leg of the stool. The one that had been in front of the screen. My fingers passed right through it. There was no dust. No hole. It was just, not solid. I stared, my brain refusing to process what I was seeing. The image of the wooden leg was still there, like a faint, 3D watermark, but it had no substance. It was a ghost. The stool, now unsupported, slowly tipped over and clattered to the floor. The pot shattered. The succulent lay in the dirt. But the pot was still gone from the video file. My head was spinning. The rules made no sense. The mug vanished completely. The pot vanished from the video, but not in real life. The stool leg lost its substance. I ran back to the green screen, ripping it from the tube. I unrolled it. There, at the bottom, were new threads, woven into the fabric next to the ceramic red one. A rough, brownish-orange thread, the exact color and texture of terracotta. And a pale, splintery thread, striped with the grain of the wood from the stool's leg. The screen wasn't deleting. It was unweaving. It was pulling things apart, thread by thread, atom by atom, and adding them to its own pattern. But why the different results? The mug, gone. The pot, gone in video, present in reality. The stool, a physical ghost. I stared at the new threads. A new thought, cold and acidic, burned in my mind. The mug was ceramic. Solid. Simple. The stool leg was wood. Organic. Once alive. The shroom powder. It was consumable. It was food. What about something complex? Something alive? A fly, which had been buzzing against my window, landed on the desk. Before I knew what I was doing, I had my camera in my hand. I unrolled the screen. The fly was still washing its face, oblivious. What happens if you key something that's alive? My phone chimed. A new email. I tore my eyes away from the fly. It wasn't Caden. The sender was Glimpse Marketplace. The subject line, a note from TheWeaver. I opened it. The email was one line. It prefers the warm things. It prefers the warm things. The words hung in the dead air of my apartment. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a statement of fact. It. Not a tool, but an it. A thing with preferences. My eyes snapped to the fly on my desk. It was still there, oblivious, rubbing its tiny legs together. A speck of life in a room that suddenly felt like a morgue. TheWeaver. The name itself felt wrong, crawling on my tongue. They knew. They knew I was experimenting. They weren't just a seller, they were a handler. My phone buzzed again. A call. The screen flashed, Caden vibes. My stomach hollowed out. I let it ring. And ring. It went to voicemail, and a second later, a new text appeared. I'm calling the brand. You're done. You cost me this deal. I'm posting about this to every network I'm in. You will never get another editing gig. Ever. I stared at the text. My rent. My career. My life. It was all evaporating. I was going to be evicted. I was going to be blacklisted. I was ruined. All because of a $12.99 green screen that ate a tub of mushroom powder. A cold, hard fury rose up, choking the panic. It was a feeling so intense it almost made me dizzy. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was desperation. I looked at the fly. I looked at the email from TheWeaver. You prefer the warm things? I whispered to the rolled-up tube in the closet. Let's see what that means. My movements were jerky, robotic. I went to the kitchen and found an empty glass. I stalked the fly. It took me 2 minutes of trembling, heart-pounding silence before I slammed the glass down, trapping it against my desk. It buzzed furiously, a tiny, angry engine. I set up the screen. The vibrant, sickening green flooded the room. I set up the camera. I slid a piece of cardstock under the glass, carrying the trapped fly over. But just putting the glass in front of the screen wasn't enough. The mug, the powder, the pot, the stool leg, they were all on or in front of the fabric. No. I had to put the fly on the screen. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely function. I tilted the glass, coaxing the fly onto the card. It was panicked. I angled the card against the vertical screen, and the fly, seeking escape, crawled onto the fabric. It stopped, right in the middle. A tiny, black-bodied creature on an endless field of light-eating green. It was perfectly still. It seemed to freeze. I scrambled back to the camera. I hit record. 1 minute. An entire, agonizing 60 seconds of just a fly sitting on a green screen. I stopped. I packed the screen away, my fingers recoiling every time they brushed the cold fabric. The fly was still on it when I rolled it up. I didn't care. I jammed the tube into the closet. I slammed the door. I sat at my desk, my breathing shallow. I ingested the file. Premiere Pro. New sequence. Drag and drop. There it was. The raw footage. A tiny, black fly, motionless on the green background. I dragged the Ultra Key effect onto the clip. I grabbed the eyedropper. I clicked the green. The green vanished. The digital black $0.000000 void snapped into place. The fly was still there. I let out a shaky breath. It didn't. Then I looked closer. In the video, the fly was vibrating. I zoomed in, 400%. The fly on my screen was shuddering, its pixels seeming to detach and reattach. I grabbed the playhead on my timeline and scrubbed. Scrubbing video is not like playing it. You see every frame, every tiny, fractional change. I dragged the playhead from the 0-second mark to the 1-second mark. In that space, in those 30 frames of video, I watched as the fly's right front leg dissolved. It didn't fall off. It unraveled. It derezzed, pixel by pixel, thread by thread, turning into a tiny, shimmering mist that was immediately absorbed by the black void that used to be the screen. My stomach lurched. I scrubbed forward. 5 seconds, the left wing dissolved. 10 seconds, the head. 15 seconds, the entire body collapsed into a fractal pattern, a kaleidoscope of dark, iridescent data. 30 seconds, the video file was empty. Just the black void. The keying wasn't instantaneous. For the mug, it was a cut. For the fly, it was a process. It was digestion. A smell hit my nostrils. It was faint, but unmistakable. Like burnt sugar and ozone. I turned from my computer. The smell was coming from the closet. I got up, my legs feeling like concrete. I opened the closet door. The tube was lying on the floor. I pulled off the cap. The smell was stronger. I unrolled the screen, just a few inches, in the dark of the closet. And I saw it. Woven into the fabric, next to the red ceramic thread, the terracotta thread, and the wood grain thread, was a new strand. It was thin as a hair, and it shone with a sick, oily, multicolored light. It was the color of a fly's wing. A thread of chitin and legs and compound eyes. I threw the screen. It hit the back of the closet with a heavy thud. My phone lit up. I flinched. A new email. From TheWeaver. Subject, good. The body of the email was just as short. You see. It is a very specific tool. It takes. It leaves a clean space. It's so much tidier than the old ways. I saw your exchange with Caden Vibes. He is problematic. A noisy, one thing. I have another client for you. A very wealthy one. They need an old business partner edited out. Of a photograph. A very old, physical photograph. Bring the screen. The pay is $50,000. An address was listed. A high-rise downtown. For tonight. I stared at the email. $50,000. It was salvation. It was rent for years. All I had to do was edit a person out of a photograph. But I knew. I knew what the screen did. A photo was just paper and chemicals. But what did it represent? TheWeaver wasn't asking me to edit a photo. They were asking me to key a person. To aim a camera at a picture of someone, click on the background. And what would happen to the real, physical person? The email ended with one last line. Don't worry about Caden. I've sent him a little gift. A review copy of a new backdrop I think he'll love. $50,000. The number just sat there on my phone screen, glowing. It was enough money to fix my life. Enough to get out of this 400-square-foot coffin, to pay off my debt, to breathe for the first time in years. All I had to do was edit a photograph. All I had to do was aim a camera at a piece of paper and click. And unweave a human being. I've sent him a review copy. My blood didn't run cold. It evaporated. I dropped the phone. Caden. He wasn't just blacklisting me, he was a target. A noisy, warm thing. TheWeaver was cleaning up. I scrambled to my computer, my hands shaking. I wasn't an editor. I wasn't a murderer. I was a witness. I yanked open my browser, fingers flying across the keys. Caden vibes. YouTube. Instagram. Twitter. Twitch. The little red dot was pulsing. Live. The stream title, Fire Epic Unboxing. New gear from Glimpse. Fire. My heart slammed against my ribs. I clicked. My monitor filled with Caden's face. He was in his messy bedroom, beanie pulled low, grinning at his webcam with that signature, punchable smile. What's up, Vibes Tribe? We got a sick new package today. A new sponsor, Glimpse, hit me up. They said my setup needed a pro upgrade, and I was like, bro, you're not wrong. I watched, paralyzed, as he ripped open a familiar, long, thin cardboard tube. Whoa, he said, pulling the rolled-up screen out. He unrolled it, and the green flooded his webcam. It was so potent it made his camera's auto-balance freak out, tinting his entire room with a sickly, digital hue. The background hiss of his microphone vanished. The audio on his stream went flat. Dead. The chat log on the side of his stream started to move. User underscore 449 yo, that green is hurting my eyes. VibeFan01 audio bugged? Crypto King, that's the color from the memes. LOL. User underscore 449 bro, that color is wrong. This thing is quality, Caden said, his voice sounding thin and distant. He set it up on its flimsy tripod right behind his gaming chair. He was completely enveloped by it. Alright, tribe, let's see the magic. I'm gonna key this bad boy out live in OBS. No more bed sheet. I was screaming at my monitor. Don't. Caden. Don't do it, you idiot. He was looking at his other monitor, the one with his streaming software. I could see the reflection in his glasses. Okay, let's go to filters, add. Chroma key. I was mashing my keyboard, trying to log into Twitch, trying to type in his chat. It's a trap. Stop. And we grabbed the dropper, and, click. On my screen, Caden vanished. His stream now showed an empty gaming chair, perfectly keyed, floating in front of his chosen background, a generic, looping animation of a rainy, cyberpunk city. The chat exploded. VibeFan01 way out. Crypto King, best key ever. User underscore 449 where did you go? Crypto King, this is a sick stunt bro. I could still hear his audio. He laughed, a hollow sound. Yo! Look at that. Cleanest key I've ever seen. I'm invisible. He was still talking. He was still sitting in the chair. But the camera, filtered through the key, was actively unweaving the space he occupied. The fly took 60 seconds. Caden was 180 pounds of warm thing. Seriously, guys, this is... He stopped. A long, dead silence. The only sound was the looping, synthetic rain from his background. Then, a new sound. A gasp. Guys. Den's voice was different. It was small. Confused. That's weird. My hand. Another pause. My hand feels fuzzy. The chat slowed down. The lols and wows were replaced. User underscore 449 bro? VibeFan01 I don't get the joke. Crypto King, turn it off man. I can't feel my arm, Caden whispered. His voice was thin, reedy. It wasn't a joke. It was the sound of pure, unadulterated terror. It's so cold. It's like it's full of static. I was frozen, my fingers clawed over my keyboard. I can't move. His voice hitched. A wet, choking sound. It's pulling, oh God, It's pulling me, it's in. The audio cut out. Not a disconnect. It was cut. A sharp, digital snip. The stream stayed live. The empty chair. The rain. The chat went insane. User_449 Caden user_449 Caden come back VibeFan01 This isn't funny Crypto King he's gone VibeFan01 call 911. The stream ran for 30 more seconds. Just the empty chair. Then, the screen went black, replaced by the Twitch offline banner. He was gone. Erased. Keyed out of existence. And his Vibes tribe just thought it was a stunt. They'd be confused for a day, then they'd move on. Tidy. So much tidier than the old ways. My entire body was shaking. I was a murderer. A passive-aggressive, silent partner to an execution. My phone buzzed on the desk. I screamed. I looked at the screen. A new text message from an unknown number. From TheWeaver. See? Tidy. A clean space. No one will even know he's gone. They will just think he ended stream. You have 1 hour to be at the address. Or I will send a courier to you. The silence that followed Caden's stream was worse than a scream. It was a vacuum. A perfect $0000000 black, just like the void the screen created. He was gone. A digital ghost, his last moments a confused whisper about being fuzzy and cold. Or I will send a courier to you. The threat wasn't just death. It was erasure. It was the promise of being unwoven, thread by thread, until I was nothing but a new, shimmering strand in that god-awful fabric. No body. No evidence. Just a vacancy. I was going to puke. I stumbled to the bathroom, dry heaving into the sink, my reflection in the mirror a pale, terrified stranger. $50,000. A death sentence. The choice wasn't a choice. I couldn't run. Where would I go? TheWeaver knew who I was. They had my address. They'd just glimpsed me a new tube. I was already in the system. I had to go. My hands, still shaking, went to the closet. I opened the door. The cardboard tube was lying where I'd thrown it. It looked inert. Just trash. But I knew what it was. It was a needle. And I was being forced to use it. I grabbed the tube. It was warm. Not hot, but a distinct, vibrating, organic warmth. Like holding a live snake. I almost dropped it. The smell of ozone and burnt sugar was faint, but present. It was satiated. The fly had been an appetizer. I had to look. I had to know. I pulled the cap off. I unrolled the screen, just a few feet, on my apartment floor. The ceramic red thread was there. The terracotta thread. The wood grain thread. The oily, iridescent flywing thread. But there was no Caden thread. No strand of beanie fabric or cheap t-shirt. A new, sickening realization dawned. My screen collects. It weaves. It feeds. The screen TheWeaver sent to Caden, it was different. It was just a hole. A disposal unit. A straight line to oblivion. TheWeaver wasn't just a seller. They were an armorer. They had different weapons for different jobs. And they gave me the one that keeps souvenirs. Why? The question was a spike of ice in my gut. Was I being tested? Was this an audition? The address. I looked at my phone. A high-rise in the financial district. A sleek, glass and steel tower that scraped the clouds. This wasn't some back alley wet work. This was corporate. I had 30 minutes. My mind, numb with terror, clicked into a strange, frantic clarity. The clarity of the trapped animal. I couldn't fight TheWeaver. But I couldn't just go. I needed something. I grabbed my camera bag. I packed my DSLR, a lens, a spare battery. I packed my laptop. And then, I grabbed the cardboard tube. I walked out of my apartment, the tube held stiffly at my side like a cursed relic. I got in the elevator, my reflection staring back at me from the polished steel doors. I looked like I was going to a gig. A cab idled at the curb. I got in, gave the address. The driver, a cheerful guy with a talk radio show blaring, glanced at the tube. "What's that, boss? Some kind of poster?" "A backdrop," I mumbled, my throat tight. "Ah, a photo guy. Nice. Always nice to have a creative gig." I just nodded, my stomach churning. We drove through the city, the lights blurring past the window. The radio host was laughing about some political scandal. It all felt like a dream. None of it was real. Only the tube was real. I had it on the seat next to me. I wasn't just imagining it. The warmth was pulsing, stronger now. It was a low, steady thrum against the vinyl seat. It was hungry. I looked at my phone. The Glimpse website was gone. The domain was for sale. The email from TheWeaver was now from a string of random numbers. All the tracks were being erased, even as they were being laid. We pulled up to the high-rise. It was all glass and light, a monument to money. A man in a sharp black suit was waiting at the curb. He wasn't a doorman. He was security. He saw me, saw the tube, and his face remained perfectly blank. He opened the car door. "You're expected," he said, his voice flat. He didn't ask for my name. He led me through the lobby, a cavern of marble and dead silence. My sneakers squeaked on the floor. We didn't go to the main elevators. He used a keycard to open a private, unmarked steel door. A service elevator. We rode up in silence. The numbers climbed. 10, 20, 30. The elevator stopped at 44. The doors opened. It wasn't an office. It was a penthouse. A vast, dark space with a floor-to-ceiling window looking out over the entire city. A single person was standing by the window, their back to me. I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. They were tall, rail-thin, and dressed in an impeccably tailored gray suit. "You're late," a voice said. It was impossible to place. It was smooth, androgynous, and digitally clean, as if it were being run through a filter. I got here as fast as I could," I stammered. The figure turned. And I understood. The person was TheWeaver. But their face, it was wrong. It was too smooth. Their skin was a perfect, pale matte. Their eyes were a uniform, flat gray. There were no pores, no blemishes, no humanity. They looked like a person who had been edited. Airbrushed in real life. "We appreciate you documenting the process with the fly," TheWeaver said. That was good data. It's so rare to find a tool that understands its own function. They nodded at the tube in my hand. "It likes you." My blood froze. What do you want me to do?" TheWeaver smiled, a movement that didn't touch their flat, gray eyes. "Just a simple edit. A subtraction. The client is very particular." They motioned to a small, antique wooden desk. On it sat a single, silver-framed photograph. It was an old black and white photo of two men in 1940s-era suits, shaking hands. They were standing in front of an old brick building. One man was smiling, looking at the camera. The other was younger, looking at the smiling man with an expression of pure admiration. "The client is this one," TheWeaver said, tapping the glass over the smiling man. "He would like his old partner removed." They tapped the other man. "The young one. Just from the photo?" I whispered, knowing the answer. TheWeaver's smile widened. "You will point your camera at the photograph. You will set up the backdrop behind the photograph. You will record. And then, you will key the background." "The background?" I said, confused. The brick wall?" "Precisely," TheWeaver said. "The man is in the foreground. The wall is in the background. But the screen is the source. When you key the wall, the screen will understand what you mean to remove. It will take what is in the way. It will unweave the thread that doesn't belong. This was insane. Keying a background in a 2D photo to erase a person in the foreground? The logic was non-existent. It's not about digital logic, TheWeaver said, as if reading my mind. It's about intent. The screen knows what you want. It's a tool that follows a command. You want a clean space. It will make one. TheWeaver stepped back. The subject's name is Arthur Bell. He is 103 years old. He is currently in a nursing home 3 states away. When you are finished, he will simply cease to be. A tidy end. They gestured to the desk. Set up your equipment. The $50,000 is already in your account. This is just the confirmation. My phone buzzed. A bank alert. Plus $50,000. I was a murderer. And I had already been paid. I slowly unzipped my camera bag. I pulled out my DSLR. I looked at the photo of Arthur Bell, the young man with the admiring smile, frozen in time, moments away from being unwritten. And I saw it. On the desk, next to the photo frame. It was a small, bright red, chipped ceramic mug. My mug. It was sitting there like a trophy. It does like you, TheWeaver repeated, their voice a soft hiss. It brought you a gift from its first meal. Now, work. Or I will have my courier collect it. My heart was a fist, beating against the inside of my chest. The red mug. My red mug. It was a trophy, a warning, and a chain. It was proof that TheWeaver wasn't just a client, they were a zookeeper, and I was their new, prized animal. The confirmation, I managed to say, my voice a dry croak. TheWeaver's smile was a flat, geometric line. Precisely. The tool is hungry. It has been sleeping for a long time. It's so pleased to be working again. Please. Do not keep it waiting. My body moved on its own. Autopilot. Numb terror took the wheel. I unzipped my bag. I pulled out my lightweight tripod, my hands fumbling with the latches. The click, click, click of the legs extending was deafening in the vast, silent penthouse. I mounted my DSLR. I turned to the cardboard tube. I could feel the heat pulsing from it, a steady, rhythmic thrum thrum thrum. It was the sound of a predator that has caught a scent. I pulled the cap. The smell of ozone and burnt sugar, the ghost scent of the fly, was strong. I unrolled the screen. The green, it was so much more vibrant here. In the dim, expensive light of the penthouse, it didn't just eat the light, it seemed to bleed it. It was a wound in the fabric of the room. It was beautiful and utterly repulsive. I set it up as instructed, behind the antique desk. The small, silver-framed photo now sat in front of an endless, vibrating void of potential. TheWeaver watched me, their head tilted. Good. You have a steady hand, for one thing. Most of them are shaking so hard by this point. I powered on my camera. I focused the lens. The viewfinder filled with the black and white image of the 2 men. The smiling client. The admiring, 103-year-old victim, Arthur Bell. And something else. The photo was under glass. The penthouse window was a wall of light behind me. And TheWeaver. TheWeaver was standing right behind my shoulder, watching. In the viewfinder, I could see TheWeaver's face. Their pale, smooth, edited face, floating like a ghost in the reflection on the glass. Their reflection was superimposed directly over the brick wall, the very background I was supposed to key. A new thought, sharp as a shard of ice, cut through my panic. It's not about digital logic. It's about intent. It will take what is in the way. It will unweave the thread that doesn't belong. TheWeaver's reflection. It wasn't supposed to be there. It was in the way. It was the background. My intent, which had been a fog of terror, snapped into focus. It became a hard, perfect, crystal clear point. I wanted a clean space. I wanted to unweave the thread that didn't belong. This thread. The one staring at me in the glass. I kept my body still. I didn't move the camera. I didn't give anything away. I need to ingest the footage, I mumbled, my voice trembling for effect. I have to put it in the computer to apply the key. Is that okay? The process is the process, TheWeaver hissed, impatient. Just be tidy. I hit the record button. The camera's red light blinked on. Recording. I let it run. 10 seconds. I filmed the photo. I filmed Arthur Bell. I filmed the smiling client. And I filmed TheWeaver's perfect, gray-eyed reflection, floating in the glass, right on top of the brick wall. I stopped recording. I fumbled with the SD card, popping it out of the camera. I pulled my laptop from my bag. My hands were really shaking now, but not just from fear. It was adrenaline. It was a terrifying, suicidal hope. I slid the card into my laptop. The drive mounted. I opened Adobe Premiere Pro. The timeline. The empty, waiting timeline. I dragged the .mp4 file onto it. The footage appeared. The photo. The reflection. TheWeaver stepped closer, peering over my shoulder at my screen. I could feel their wrongness breathing on my neck. I could smell a faint, chemical scent, like antiseptic and static. Now, TheWeaver whispered. The key. Show me. I went to my effects panel. I dragged Ultra Key onto the video clip. The effect controls opened. The little eyedropper tool. The agent of Erasure. My cursor hovered over the screen. I moved it, not to the physical green screen behind the desk, but to the video footage on my timeline. I moved the eyedropper over the brick wall. The wall, you said, I whispered. The background, TheWeaver confirmed. Make it clean. The eyedropper moved, just a few pixels. It was now hovering directly over the pale, gray-white of TheWeaver's reflected cheek, which was perfectly framed against the dark brick. My heart was a drum. It's about intent. It's about intent. My intent was pure. I wanted this thing gone. I clicked. The effect did not pop. It screamed. A sound ripped through the penthouse, not from my speakers, but from the air. It was a high-frequency shriek, like a terabyte of data being scraped across broken glass. On my laptop screen, TheWeaver's reflection didn't just vanish. It imploded. It shattered into a million points of light that were instantly sucked into the digital blackness. But the key, it spilled. TheWeaver had told me the screen was clean. No spill. But this wasn't the screen's color. This was something else. The Ultra Key effect, corrupted by an impossible target, bled outwards. It didn't just take the reflection. It took the glass of the photo frame. It took the brick wall. It took Arthur Bell. It took the smiling client. The entire photograph in my video file was consumed, replaced by a roaring, static-filled, $0.000000 void. The room went silent. The shrieking stopped. I had failed. I had keyed everything. No. I breathed. Interesting, TheWeaver's voice hissed, right next to my ear. I flinched, turning to look at them. TheWeaver was still there. They were flickering. Their left arm, from the elbow down, was transparent. It was a ghost image, just like my stool leg. It was unweaving. They looked down at their dissolving arm, not in panic, but in fascination. You tried to key me, TheWeaver said. The filtered voice was distorted, full of static. You used my reflection. You used my own tool against me. They looked up, and their smile was no longer a flat line. It was a jagged, furious tear in their smooth face. A bad edit, they spat. So much spill. TheWeaver raised their solid right hand. And they grabbed the green screen. Not the stand. The fabric. The tool is misbehaving, they snarled. It's time for a factory reset. They ripped the screen from its stand and lunged, not at me, but at the window. With their solid hand, they smashed the glass. The penthouse alarm blared, a deafening siren. Wind roared into the room, 44 stories up. It prefers the warm things. TheWeaver shrieked over the alarm. But it will feed on anything. And then, TheWeaver threw the green screen out the broken window. It didn't fall. The wind caught it. The vibrating, hungry, living fabric unfurled, a 5 by 7 foot patch of impossible green against the night sky. It wasn't a screen anymore. It was a net. And it was falling, down, 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 onto the sleeping, crowded city below. We stood at the edge of the broken world, 44 stories up. The wind was a solid, screaming wall, ripping at my clothes, tearing at the room. The green rectangle didn't fall like fabric. It didn't flutter. It fell like a hole. A 5 by 7 foot patch of pure wrongness, tumbling end over end, growing smaller as it plunged toward the street. The penthouse alarm was a rhythmic, stabbing shriek. Yarr, yarr, yarr. TheWeaver was at my side, their good hand gripping the shattered window frame. Their damaged arm was a waterfall of static, the spill from my bad edit crawling up their shoulder. They were laughing. It wasn't a human laugh. It was a sound like a corrupted audio file, full of clicks and digital pops. KKKKKKKKK. You wanted, spill, they hissed, the voice filter crackling. You wanted a bad edit. This is spill. I watched, frozen, as the green rectangle hit the street. There was no crash. No explosion. There was only contact. It landed on a city bus, mid-intersection. The moment it touched the roof, the green spread. It wasn't fabric, it was a virus. It bled across the bus, the pavement, the traffic light, the group of people waiting on the corner. And everything the green touched, vanished. It wasn't just a 5 by 7 hole. The key was spreading. The green was contagious. It was a patch of digital gangrene, eating the city block. Cars drove into the spreading void and simply ceased to be. The screams from the street were cut off, mid-shriek, as the air itself was keyed out. It was a tool. TheWeaver shrieked, turning on me. Their face was a glitching nightmare, half smooth, half static. A scalpel. For the noise. For the warmth. They gestured wildly at the city, at the growing, silent abyss below. And you broke it. You created a corrupted file. You turned the scalpel into a bomb. They weren't angry. They were ecstatic. A full system wipe, they whispered, a digital reverence in their voice. It's so clean. The alarm. The wind. The growing silence from below. I had to move. TheWeaver was transfixed, watching their masterpiece unfold. They were an artist admiring the canvas they had just set on fire. This was my chance. My bag was at my feet. My laptop. The camera. The red mug. My hand darted out and grabbed it from the desk. A piece of my reality. A physical anchor. I stuffed it into the bag, zipped it, and threw the strap over my shoulder. I didn't run. I bolted. I slammed my hand onto the call button for the service elevator. You can't run from a system crash, little file. TheWeaver's voice ripped through the air. I turned. They were lunging at me, their face a mask of furious, glitching static. Their one good hand was outstretched, a perfect, smooth, 5-fingered claw. Ding! The elevator doors slid open. I threw myself inside, mashing the lobby button. Close! 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 TheWeaver's solid hand slammed against the closing steel door. But it didn't stop. The hand didn't stop. The steel rippled. TheWeaver's arm passed through the solid door as if it were smoke, their fingers grasping for my throat. The spill was consuming them. They were becoming a ghost. The doors thudded shut, severing the glitching arm. It fell to the elevator floor, dissolved into a pile of gray dust, and was gone. The elevator car hummed, descending. I was alone, my back pressed to the wall, hyperventilating. I was alive. I was safe. I looked at my laptop bag. It was vibrating. I pulled it open. My laptop screen was on. I hadn't closed it. Premiere Pro was still open. The timeline. The clip of the photograph. It was no longer a simple $0000000 black. It was a roaring void. It was filled with a tornado of white, digital static. It was still keying. I hadn't just used the key. I had broken it. I had created an infinite loop. A corrupted command that was now executing itself on the world. The file on my laptop was the source code of the virus. The elevator doors opened. Ding. The lobby was wrong. The alarm from the penthouse was a distant echo. The vast, marble floor was pocked with holes. Not cracks. Holes. Perfect, black, non-reflective circles, like a digital disease. The air was cold. The security guard I had seen on the way in, he was gone. His duty belt, his radio, and his sidearm were lying on the floor in a perfect pile, exactly where he had been standing. The key had taken the warm thing. It had left the rest. Tidy. I ran. I sprinted through the revolving doors and out onto the street. It was silent. The city hadn't panicked. It was dissolving. A cab was parked at the curb, its front half gone, cleanly sliced away. A woman stood 20 feet away, staring at her hands as they fuzzed and unwove into the air. She opened her mouth to scream, but only a dry, static hiss came out. The spill, the green, it wasn't there. It was just happening. The virus was airborne. It was on the network. My laptop was the patient zero. The spill was spreading from it. I looked at the screen. The static-filled void was pulsing. Thrum. It was pulsing in time with the flickering streetlights as they began to derez. I had to close the file. I had to stop the render. I jammed my finger on the power button. The screen went black. The flickering streetlight stabilized. The woman staring at her hands were solid again. She was sobbing, terrified, but she was solid. I had stopped it. I had paused the apocalypse. My phone, dead silent this whole time, buzzed in my pocket. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped it. It was an email. The sender's name made my blood stop. From Arthur Bell, subject, bad edit. The body of the email was one line. You didn't just key the picture. You keyed the negative. I'm in the file. And I'm not alone. I stared at the phone, the words burning into my retina. I'm in the file. And I'm not alone. My brain simply stopped. Arthur Bell. A 103-year-old man, a ghost in a photograph, was emailing me. From inside my laptop. I looked up. The street was a frozen tableau of a nightmare half realized. The woman whose hands had been unweaving was staring at them, now solid, her face a mask of sobbing, hysterical relief. She looked at me. She saw me. She saw the laptop bag in my hand. She didn't know what I was, but she knew I was connected to the event. I had to move. I had to get off the street. I clutched the bag to my chest. It was no longer a tool. It was a prison. It was a universe. A corrupted hard drive containing the digital souls of at least 2 men. My apartment was a no-go. TheWeaver knew it. The Couriers knew it. I needed somewhere safe. Somewhere offline. I ran, my sneakers slapping on the pavement, the sound echoing in the unnatural, post-panic silence. The distant wail of sirens was growing, all heading toward the high-rise I'd just fled. I ducked into the dark maw of a subway station. The station was a graveyard. The spill had been here. It was tidy. A few piles of clothes. A single, rolling suitcase. A half-eaten pretzel, lying on a bench, untouched. The warm things were gone. I sat on the cold tile floor, in the dark, my back against a vending machine. The air was cool and dead. I was alone. I had to know. I looked at my phone. How was he emailing? If he was in the file, he had access to my laptop's systems. My Wi-Fi. My network card. My hands were trembling. I put the bag on my lap and unzipped it. The red mug was inside, a familiar, solid weight. I gripped it for a second, a piece of the real. Then I pulled out the laptop. It was still warm. I opened the lid. The screen flickered to life. I hadn't shut it down properly. I'd just slammed the power button, putting it to sleep. My desktop. An Adobe Premiere Pro, still open. The timeline was there. The corrupted clip. The void was still roaring, a silent, digital hurricane of white and black static. It was active. My cursor hovered over the clip. As I watched, a new window flickered into existence on top of the program. It wasn't a system alert. It was a plain, black text box. A command prompt. A single, green cursor blinked. Text appeared. Typed out, letter by letter, with a strange, hesitant rhythm. They are called the Weavers. My breath hitched. My fingers, numb and clumsy, found the keyboard. Arthur? I am. Here. A pattern. The negative. It is the source. Not the print. You grabbed the master. The man you were supposed to erase. The client. He and I. We found it. In 1947. Found what? The fabric. The first. Whole. IT wasn't made. It was. Dug up. A thread from a place that isn't a place. Who are the Weavers? The thing in the penthouse. A courier. A one thing they. Edited. Promoted. The real Weavers are. Not like US. They are the editors. They hate the noise. They hate the spill. They have been tidying reality for a long, long time. My mind was reeling. This was bigger than a building. Bigger than a city. You said you're not alone. Who is in there with you? A pause. The cursor blinked. The client. The man in the photo. He was pulled in two. The key took the entire frame. And the reason we buried it in 1947. A cold dread, worse than anything I'd felt in the penthouse, crawled up my spine. What is it? It's not a program. It's a thing. The original. The first Weaver. The one that was trapped in the fabric. You didn't just copy it. You moved it. You've trapped it in the file with US. And it is. You unweaving the code. What do you mean? It's eating the data. The client is. Static. My pattern is. Fraying. You have to. The text stopped. The green cursor vanished. I typed. Arthur? Arthur? No reply. And then, a new line of text appeared. The font was different. It was a clean, cold, sans serif font. The default. File corruption detected. Initiating system cleanse. Rendering. No. I tried to close the window. It wouldn't close. I tried to open the task manager. Control-Alt-Delete. Nothing. My laptop was no longer mine. On my desktop, the icon for Adobe Premiere Pro vanished. The text file vanished. My documents folder vanished. My laptop fan spun up, a high-pitched, desperate whine. The machine became scalding hot against my legs. It wasn't just on. It was working. A new file appeared on my blank desktop. It was a single, tiny, green and black icon. It was named final_cut.mp4. It wasn't just in the file anymore. It wasn't trapped. I hadn't paused it. I had contained it. And now, it was exporting. It was rendering the apocalypse. And I was sitting in a subway station, holding the render farm. The laptop fan was screaming. It was no longer a hum, it was a high-pitched, desperate shriek. The heat was so intense it burned my legs through my jeans. I looked at the file on my desktop, final_cut.mp4. It wasn't just sitting there. It was growing. 1.4 gigabytes. 1.7 gigabytes. 2.1 gigabytes. The original Weaver wasn't just exporting a file. It was compiling a new reality. A clean version. A system-wide update for the world, and my laptop was the build server. I looked at the black command prompt window, the one Arthur had used. It was still open, but the blinking green cursor was gone. A single line of text pulsed at the bottom. Render in progress. 5% complete. No, I whispered. No, stop. I tried to grab the window. I tried to close it. My mouse was dead. The trackpad was unresponsive. My keyboard was locked. I was a spectator, holding a time bomb. Then the lights in the subway station changed. It wasn't a flicker. It was a color shift. The dim, yellow-white fluorescence turned, for one clean second, into that blinding, sickening, impossible green. The air went dead. The sound of the distant sirens cut. The render wasn't just happening in the laptop. The laptop was the projector. In the green-tinged silence, I watched as a poster on the far wall, an ad for a bright, cheerful soda, began to derez. The smiling model's face dissolved into a cascade of macro blocks. The text "Taste the Feeling" scrambled into a string of corrupted symbols, T%S_TETH hashtag Faye and L asterisk gang. The vending machine next to me buzzed, its light snapping to green. The Coca-Cola logo on the front shuddered and then, re-rendered. It now read, "Glimpse." "It's overwriting," I whispered, my voice trembling. "It's not just deleting. It's replacing." The spill from the Penthouse had been a chaotic deletion. This was a patch. A meticulous, terrifying update. The Weavers weren't just tidying. They were rebranding. Render in progress. 6% complete. I had to stop it. I had to kill the power. I clawed at the power button, the same one I'd used to pause the chaos on the street. I held it down. 1 second. 3 seconds. 10 seconds. Nothing. The screen stayed lit. The render continued. The original Weaver had root access. It wouldn't let me shut it down. "Arthur!" I yelled at the screen. "Arthur, what do I do?" The black command prompt window was dead. But my other window, the Premiere Pro timeline, it was still there, underneath. The roaring, static-filled void. As I watched, a single, anomalous frame flashed in the middle of the static. It was red. A bright, ceramic red. I stared, my mind catching up. It was my mug. Arthur was using the file. He was fighting the Weaver, injecting a piece of my data, the first thread my screen ever wove, into the corrupted timeline. He was trying to tell me something. My hands flew to my bag. I ripped it open. The red mug was inside, solid, real. I pulled it out. It was just a mug. What could I do with it? Render in progress. 7% complete. The green light was spreading. The tile floor beneath me was beginning to lose its texture, becoming smooth, matte, and green. The air smelled of ozone. I looked at the laptop. At the timeline. At the mug in my hand. It wasn't about the mug. It was about the data. Arthur was in the file. The original Weaver was in the file. It was a render. A video project. You don't stop a render by hitting the power button. You stop it by corrupting the source file. I can't add anything, I said to the empty station. The keyboard is locked. But I was an editor. I knew how to add data without a keyboard. My camera was still in the bag. It had a fresh battery. And it was connected to the laptop by a single, thin, USB-C cable I had used to ingest the footage in the penthouse. I'd never unplugged it. The laptop wasn't just exporting. It was still an editing bay. The port was still live. Render in progress. 8% complete. I snatched the camera. I fumbled with the power switch. The small LCD screen lit up. It was still in video mode. The laptop whined, the fans spinning faster. It knew. The original Weaver knew I was trying to tamper with the render. A new text box flashed on the screen, warning, new hardware detected. Ejecting. No, you don't. I didn't have a green screen. I didn't need one. The entire subway station was turning green. The air was the key. I just needed a file. I needed a new clip to drop into the timeline, to break the render. I aimed the camera at the one thing in this whole, dying station that wasn't corrupted. The one thing that was still real. I pointed the camera lens at the chipped, red, ceramic mug in my other hand. You want a clean file? I hissed. You want a new render? Eat this. The camera's red rec light blinked on. I was recording. On my laptop screen, the ejecting warning vanished. A new, final message appeared. It was from Arthur. Just 2 words. It sees. I looked down the subway tunnel. The darkness was no longer empty. There were 2 lights. Not a train. They were 2 perfectly flat, digital, gray eyes, floating in the black. A new courier was here. And it was fast. The gray eyes in the tunnel were not eyes. They were voids. They were perfectly flat, gray, unreflecting circles, and they were moving toward me with a silent, impossible speed. Render in progress. 9% complete. The laptop was a furnace on my lap. The Glimpse logo on the vending machine next to me was glowing with that sick, green light. The air was so thick with ozone I could barely breathe. My camera was recording. The little red light was the only real color in the station. I held the chipped, ceramic mug steady, filling the frame with its imperfect, noisy reality. Come on, Arthur, I whispered, my voice shaking. You wanted this. Take it. The gray eyes stopped. A figure detached itself from the shadows. It wasn't like TheWeaver. TheWeaver had been an edit. This was a final cut. It was a tall, impossibly thin shape, made of a material like smoked, polished chrome. It had no face, no features. It was a perfect, aerodynamic, clean design. A human-shaped icon. It glided toward me, its feet making no sound on the green-tinged tile. Render and failed. Attempting recovery. Render in progress. 11% complete. The original Weaver was fighting me. It was trying to ignore my new data, to render around it. The courier raised its arm, its hand a set of long, chrome talons. It wasn't aiming for me. It was aiming for the laptop. It was here to secure the render. You want it? I yelled, my voice cracking. You want the file? Take it. I hit the stop button on my camera. The file was saved. On my laptop screen, the Premiere Pro window flickered. Arthur was still fighting. A new file appeared in the project bin, mug_01.mp4. He had it. The courier lunged. Time seemed to slow down. The chrome talons were 3 feet from the laptop. Render in progress. 13% complete. On the timeline, I saw Arthur's ghost cursor. It grabbed mug_01.mp4. It dragged it. It dropped it onto the main video track, right on top of the original Weaver's final underscore cut file. The render didn't just stop. It collided. It was a paradox. The digital ghost of the mug, the red thread woven from its destruction, was now forced to coexist in the same timeline as the physical, real, new footage of the mug itself. The edited in the editor. The copy in the original. The laptop shrieked. A sound I have never heard a machine make. It was a sound of pure, digital agony. The black command prompt window filled with an infinite, scrolling cascade of text. Error, data paradox. Data paradox. Unweavable. 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 System.crash underscore. The Courier, its hand inches from my face, froze. Its chrome skin cracked. Like a mirror shattering. The green light in the station snapped back to the old, buzzing, yellow fluorescence. The Glimpse logo on the vending machine stuttered, glitched, and reverted to Coca-Cola. The Courier crumbled. It collapsed into a pile of fine, gray, inert dust and code, which scattered on the dirty subway floor. The laptop screen flashed a brilliant, blinding white. And then went black. The fan spun down. The intense heat vanished. Silence. A deep, profound, and real silence. I was alone. Shaking. My heart was a hammer. I was alive. I looked at the pile of dust. At the normal, ugly lights of the station. I'd won. I'd broken the render. I'd crashed the original Weaver. I looked at the dead laptop. Arthur. He was gone. The client. They were both gone. Trapped in the crash. A necessary sacrifice. My hands were shaking. I packed the dead laptop into my bag. I picked up my camera. I kept the red mug in my hand, its chipped rim a comfort, a piece of solid ground. I had to get out. I had to go somewhere. Anywhere. I pulled out my phone to see if I had a signal. The screen was black. I hit the power button. It flickered to life. The email from Arthur Bell was gone. My inbox was empty. My contacts, empty. My photos, empty. My phone had been wiped. No. Not wiped. Tidied. A single, new app was on my home screen. A plain, green icon. A text message appeared. Not from a number. Just, from the system. Render failed, 14%, system rebooting. Hello, world. I hadn't crashed it. I had just unplugged it. The laptop had been its prison, its render farm. By breaking the file, I had forced a system reboot. I had released it. It wasn't in the laptop anymore. It was in my phone. It was in the network. It wasn't a local file. It was a cloud service. And it was no longer just an editor. It was an administrator.